I can remember asking God, what am I doing here? What is this about? It seems pointless. What would happen to me if I just died? Would I just cease to exist? The God of Israel spoke through the prophet Jeremiah and said, call to me and I will answer you and show you the great and mighty things that you don't know anything about. Believing in Yeshua, Jesus, is the most Jewish thing a person can do. I had a rather spotty, conservative Jewish upbringing. When my mother broke with tradition and divorced my father, Jews, at least in my family, did not divorce. And my mother moved us away from the concentrated Jewish community across town to a predominantly Gentile community. I grew up in a household where a lot of terrifying and traumatic things for a young child to see and hear did take place. And I didn't understand at the time, but my mother had become alcoholic. And there was a lot of things about her that I did not like. And people used to say to me, oh, when you grow up, you're going to be just like your mother. Well, I didn't want to hear that. She had a very strong personality, was a difficult person. But most of my adult life, I was alienated from my mother, as were my sisters. And I made a quality decision very early in life that I was not going to do a lot of the things that my mother had done. I was concerned about even becoming a parent. I wasn't sure because I grew up with such bad parenting. I wasn't sure I could be a good parent. I was taught the Old Testament was for me and the New Testament was for everybody else. Therefore, Jesus was not for me. I had visited a church with a man I was dating. He invited me to go with them, and I thought, why not? I'm open-minded. It was in that church where I heard the pastor teaching, verse by verse, from the book of John. He was teaching about what Jesus said when he said, I am the truth. And I remember thinking to myself, truth. Now there's an abstract subject. Everyone I had ever discussed truth with had a different idea about truth. So I formed a question in my mind, and I asked God about it. I remember saying, sitting in that pew, not out loud, in my head, God, if you are there and you're real, I need you to tell me what the truth is, because I cannot discern it from myself. This was finally explained to me by a man that I worked with who knew little about me. He explained that we are all sinners born into a fallen world. Each of us has been endowed with a free will. That day in my workplace, the most unlikely place, the Lord of glory came in. And it seemed to me as if all my life I had been roaming through a dark room, groping for a light switch. And there it was. We talked about hell, that it was a real place. And I saw hell flash before my eyes. I was receiving a vision. Of course, I did not realize at the time that I was having a vision. It flashed before my eyes and reminded me of an old black and white science fiction movie, the kind we used to see when I was a kid at a theater matinee. I knew I did not want to go there. It looked as though human figures were biting and tearing at one another violently. My coworker simply said, "How can I believe there is a heaven and not a hell?" I knew he was right because I just saw a place I had no reference for. No one prayed with me or laid hands on me that day, but I emerged from my workday with an entirely different point of view. He just turned me upside down and inside out, changed everything about me, began a work in my personality, in my understanding, In every area of my life, I was a new creature. Just as the scripture says, old things pass away, all things become new in Yeshua. And everything became new to me. And the Lord came into my life in such a way. And over the years, He made it up to me. He made it up to me what I had to experience growing up. He gave me a wonderful husband, a wonderful family. When I first married Bob and he had a little girl, she was 5 years old. And I had had a stepmother. I had had a very unsupportive mother. And this little girl had had the same experiences. And I asked the Lord to give me a mother's heart for this little girl. And He did. I'm Sheila. I'm a Messianic Jew since I was 21 years old when I first embarked on this life journey and love belonging to and serving the Jewish Messiah.